So, hello everyone, and welcome again to the third in our series of webinars on trust. And today's webinar is going to be focused on trust and team alignment. As usual, first a little bit of housekeeping. If you can pop any questions either into the chat or the Q&A, I'll keep an eye on them throughout the webinar and ask the guys, and we'll get as many questions as we can answered. So, first of all, a little bit of an introduction to My People. I know we've got a few new people on the webinar today who might not have heard of us before. So My People are experts in measuring the psychological factors that affect team performance. Have you ever been impacted by a decision that was made without all the facts, and did it affect your whole team? And did it lead to mistrust in the decision, mistrust in the process, or even worse, mistrust in the people that are making it? My People take the guesswork out of teams, and we enable confidence and fairness in people decision making by allowing you to unlock the value of trust in your business. And the successful organisations that we've worked with have learned that performance is unsustainable without trust. And measuring that trust along with performance and capability became part of our DNA through our work with GB Cycling, GB Rowing and England Rugby. So my name's Wendy Kilgannon. I am the sales manager here at My People, and I'm joined today by psychologist and My People CEO Christine Hughes and Manley Hopkinson, who's a successful extreme adventurer, motivational speaker, author and CEO of the Compassionate Leadership Academy. Quite a packed intro there, Manley.
Yeah, no, thanks for that. Thanks for condensing it.
Dominating. Very nice. So, hello everyone, I'm Christian. Hopefully a few of you from the last session remember who I am, but perhaps just to recap on what we've talked about so far in the webinars. Last session we talked about trust and specifically team behaviours. And this session we're going to be talking about another contributor to team trust, and that's team alignment. So for those who weren't on our last webinar, I'm just going to cover off a few of the aspects of the last webinar that we discussed. So we introduced the concept in the last two webinars of inputs and outputs. In most businesses today, there are performance targets in place. The data we get from measuring performance is an output. It's a result of something else. Think about your organization and the targets that you have in place, whether they're sales targets, customer targets, project targets, shareholder targets. Focusing solely on those targets sets the direction, but not the journey. These are the where and not the why or the how of your business. These targets and how you're tracking against them are like the scoreboard in a sports game. You need to have an eye on the scoreboard or you don't know how you're doing, but focusing entirely on the scoreboard means you are not focused on the game. The other thing about outputs is they're generally retrospective. They're looking backwards and they're measuring what you have just done. So what are the inputs? They are what cause you to hit a goal. Inputs are things we contribute or do in our teams that enable performance to happen, to flourish. Now, when we think of inputs, we might think in terms of measuring skills, capability, training and development, recruitment processes. All of those are inputs, but that does not give us the full picture of why something or somebody is performing. Think of those factors as the toolkits that help you produce the output. They are what you can do, and used well and done consistently, they will get you a result. But whether people use their skills and develop their skills is driven by something else. So what we really want to know is the emotional and psychological inputs of teams and the environments that generate those inputs. These are the factors that actually drive performance and sustain performance over longer periods of time. That means then that the toolkit can change, so the skills that you have within your business may change, the people may change, but the environment that you've created of trust drives team performance over longer periods of time. And based on 20 years of experience in elite sport, we have been researching and understanding what those emotional and psychological inputs are and how to measure them, which is the critical factor here. This has led us to know that the three most impactful areas to measure are team relationships, so the quality and depth of relationships, and that's behind the effort that we invest and how supported we feel by our teammates. Team alignment, which is what we're going to talk about today, and that's the alignment of focus, the sense of shared purpose, and the amount of shared experience that is critical to any team achievement. and team behaviours, which is about the values and behaviours and your way of operating. These affect how you communicate, what's important within a business, how you go about your job. And they should be stronger than a set of rules when they're done well. They should be about individual commitment and the commitment an individual makes to their team. And together they give you and your teams trust. So that's trust in your teammates, trust in your leaders, trust in your organization, and ultimately trust in what you're doing. So if you put low trust into a team, everyone starts fighting for themselves. The focus is about protection and not about creating and maintaining growth. If you get high trust in the team, collaboration and growth become the norm. So today we're going to talk about alignment. What is alignment?
First of all, no Simon Sinek quote this week, I'm afraid. Vince Lombardi was a legendary NFL coach, and in fact he's so legendary that the Super Bowl trophy is actually named after him. And he spoke about the fact that individual commitment to a group effort is what makes teams work. And he also saw how this was applied to companies and societies, not just sports teams.
So when we talk about alignment, we need to be specific about the alignment of who to what. And as you'll see on this screen, we've got some notes around that, which I'm just going to talk through. But alignment sounds like a very engineering type of term. So here, when we're talking about alignment, what we're talking about is team or organizational alignment. We're talking about an individual or team's focus and commitment to the organization's goals. So this takes in a range of factors that are rarely measured within a business. That's about shared purpose, individual buy-in to a shared vision, shared experience, and an individual's commitment to a team. So this is about the individual versus the team and the organization. This is seen in the focused effort of individuals towards the team and organizational goals. And in many cases, this will involve some degree of individual sacrifice, putting the team ahead of an individual's own needs. So for the individual, this could be time sacrifice, money sacrifice, individual glory sacrifice. So what causes an individual to want to sacrifice their needs or prioritize the team's needs over their own? Sure, a lot of you on the call are thinking through different answers, and the answer is money. No, I'm joking, of course. Think about a team you've been really invested in, the team you've most cared about, where you've gone above and beyond. Why did you do that? In most cases, it boils down to two very simple things: people and purpose. Firstly, belief and trust in who you are working with. Secondly, belief and trust in the goals, in the mission, in the direction of that team and what you are trying to achieve. And what causes belief and trust? Shared experiences together, shared purpose, shared time together, seeing your teammates work as hard or harder than you for the shared goals, caring about your teammates and not wanting to let them down. A call yesterday with an ex-Australian rugby player who played in the 2003 World Cup for Australia, which was in Sydney. And since his retirement, he has devoted his life to understanding why teams, organisations and companies win. He wanted to try and cut through the noise and find the key inputs that drive performance outputs. So very similar interests to our team and very similar experiences to our team. And we were talking about the most recent World Cup in Tokyo, and specifically the teams in the latter stages of that competition, in the quarters, the semi-finals and the final. And he'd been running a complete analysis of every piece of information he could get his hands on about those teams, the squad depth, the time in role for each player, the amount of international caps, playing styles, each country's different rugby structures to see if that was influencing performance. And so going through those, we were discussing and looking at his results, and we were looking at what were the sort of 2 or 3 key metrics that made the difference. And the metric we both kept returning to was the alignment of focus and effort. We had slightly different ways of measuring this, but the alignment from amount of shared experience, the amount of shared playing time each player had had with their teammates at both international and club level in their respective countries. He'd used playing a particular style of rugby as a unit. That was something he wanted to measure. And again, that links into shared experience and amount of playing time together. And all this data that came together gave a single output around cohesion, alignment and cohesion. And do you know which 2 teams had the highest numbers in alignment and cohesion in the tournament? South Africa and England, the two finalists. And the drop off from those two, who both scored over 80%, to the quarterfinalists like Australia was big. Australia was scoring at the 54% mark. So what he found was alignment in the winning teams is higher than those who don't win. Is that a coincidence?
Yeah.
So just the last bit on alignment here before we get into some of the practical examples. So it's not a coincidence, and I'd like to share a story of working with the British and Irish Lions as they actively look to create cohesion in a short period of time. And that's a lot easier to do if you're measuring alignment and trust already and tracking it over time and comparing across teams and making interventions and seeing how those numbers change. But working with the Lions for the 2017 tour to New Zealand.
Yep.
Yeah, I know there's going to be quite a few people on here who are better with dates than me. I always forget the dates, which resulted in a tied series. For those who don't know, very few Lions teams get to win or draw in New Zealand. So that was a huge success, considering the history of the fixture. And I just want to go into the selection process for that tour. And so for those who don't know, the British and Irish Lions involves the coming together of English teams, Welsh teams, Scottish and Irish teams, and the selection from players of those nations. And they've got to come together for a very short period of time. So there's very limited prep time. I think the tours are between about 60 odd days nowadays. So they are short tours where you have to play quickly and learn a playing style together. And the process typically starts with identifying what we need to do to beat the team we are facing, in this instance, New Zealand. And that means the type of rugby, looking at the opposition, their style of play, their strengths and weaknesses, and working out what we need to do to defeat them. And nowadays, that is a pretty analytical process with statistical modelling and lots of very clever data scientists involved in that process. But once an outline of how we need to play is confirmed, we then move into who is able to execute that plan. Not just from a skill perspective, but from a style of play perspective. Who is used to playing that style of play, because they've got to be able to deliver on this plan pretty quickly. So if they have played that style of play already, that helps. But more broadly, from a communication perspective, a leadership perspective, and finally, from a desire and effort perspective. So like in business, a first filtering of players is often done by skill and performance. And commonly in recruitment, if you don't have the skills and experience, you won't even get interviewed for the role. So players need to have the experience of a particular way of playing and the skills. That's a given. But with the Lions, we're talking about such a short window of time to prepare and such a short window of time to come together that there is a real pressure on the fit. That's fit to style of play, the amount of playing time together, players that are used to executing game plans and following instructions, but most importantly, amount of shared experience between different players. And the key to this is around player rapport, who is prepared to sacrifice for the common goal. And it's especially true for players that aren't going to get selected for the major tests, who might play no part whatsoever in the test matches. And that's the key reason we're going there. So for them, it's extra hard. So we're looking at who has a history of sacrificing their individual needs for the collective. Without this quality, they don't get selected. And I can think of 3 players who may have had more skill, experience, or been perhaps physically better qualified to go on that tour, but didn't get selected because the coaches didn't feel confident in their ability to sacrifice for the collective. So that alignment of a group and continued focus and effort are some of the key inputs into team trust. And for the Lions, it's built into their selection process. The trust coaches have for their team and the trust players have for each other and their coaches is paramount for the Lions. So from an organisation and team perspective, alignment is a key input into performance and goal achievement. And perhaps that's a great segue into your world, Manley.
Yes, my world. Thank you, Christian. So now for something completely different. I had the sort of pleasure of being in Japan up until the final score of the final game, unfortunately. But it was an amazing time. So I've got a little story I just want to share about the yacht there, the sailing yacht, about this team of people I took around the world in a race called the BT Global Challenge. 32,000 miles, 9 months, 18 people on the boat, and 8 of my crew had never sailed before in their life. So they came from all walks of life, all over the world. The principle of alignment to a common purpose was absolutely key. Because you can imagine, the youngest was 21, the eldest was 60. Some wanted to win, others were trying to escape from something back home, and others were maybe trying to build friendships or bonds. So we're all there for different reasons. So creating that common sense of purpose was absolutely key. And the methodology we used was one of recognizing our individual goals, if you like, and our individual sense of purpose and our individual elements on culture and values, then bringing it all together and aligning it. Recognizing that any team is only together for a relatively short period of time as far as the lifetime is concerned. And even if you're in an organization, you're in there for a few years, the members of a team wax and wane. So making sure that for the short period of time that our purpose aligns is absolutely key thing. We were known as Team Large, actually, and there's a rugby story to that too. And the philosophy around that one is that identity is absolutely key. I'll very quickly take you back to the 1991 World Cup quarter-final, England-France in France. And all that season, the French have been magnificent. English weren't too bad either. And one of the players from the England squad, the old school style, was Mickey Skinner, who pulled off a tackle, which is known as the hit of the century, where England are right up against it. One more score for France, it would have been the end of the game. And he dug deep into his inner resolve to come up with a moment of true inspiration. He threw himself in it. And Christian, your principle about giving everything for the team is so profound here. And all the teams that we put together, we talk about the fact that the team ego is higher than the individual ego. And that's the way it needs to sit. How much are you going to commit and sacrifice? Well, Mickey Skinner's sacrifice saved the game. But the day before the game, he was interviewed and said, what's it going to be like in Paris tomorrow? Mickey, he said, large. And that was it. So we loved the largeness of that. And I told the story to my team, and we became known as Team Large on our boat, which is a key thing. The danger when we're bringing teams together, though, and we're trying to align, is that we need to put words behind it. And we need to define what the culture is. And traditionally, we'll create a set of values. The danger is the values live on a wall of an organization. They don't live on the hearts of the people. And if they live on a wall, it's meaningless. There's no sense of alignment. There's no sense of common purpose or common journey when we intellectually engage to a poster on a wall. So we actually looked at aligning people's individual purposes and getting these expressions of our culture and made them alive. A short example, one of them was about dealing with it and letting it go. You imagine life on a small tin boat, and you're at sea for over a month at a time. Now, 72-foot yacht looks big in the marina, but trust me, mid-ocean, it is absolutely minute. And you're in this small tin box in incredible seas under big pressure with people you wouldn't normally met in life, but you're here now on a common cause. So you can imagine tension could easily arise as we're miscommunicating, getting tired, angry, frightened, whatever it may be. So we hear this thing saying, deal with it and let it go, which means if I've got a problem with you, so let's say, Christian, I've got a problem with you, well, we'll deal with it and then we'll leave it on the wave behind. We'll get on with our life. And that's great. But how do you reinforce this, which is a key thing? Because reinforcing these principles is vital as well. So we had the concept, and I invite you to do it with the teams that you work with as well, because it's quite powerful, is to pick one of your value expressions, your behavioral framework, and say, right, for a short period of time, 2 hours, no more, we're going to do the opposite. So every Sunday at 4 o'clock, I'll pick one of our core values, say, right, team, next 2 hours, don't do it. So deal with it and let it go. Next 2 hours, you've got to harbor it and let it fester. What was extraordinary was the amount of tension and angst and anger that built up in just 2 hours. But it's a beautiful reinforcement of the reality of the strength of alignment of purpose and culture, which is the key thing. No matter what walks of life people come from, spending that time and effort to make sure we have that alignment is absolutely key.
So what is the problem for leaders today? Well, the problem that exists for leaders today is that there is a lack of insight into team alignment. Engagement score can give you a sentiment of what people are feeling, but it doesn't explain why they are feeling it. It doesn't give you any insight into the beliefs of people or how aligned or indeed misaligned they are to others.
So to summarize, we overemphasize or rely on output measurements like targets. And this means we're often cloudy or at worst blind to the inputs that create the conditions for performance. But visibility and insight into teams is possible, as we're going to show.
So there is research to show that if teams have a sense of shared purpose, they perform better over time. And we all know that the collective achievement can be bigger than the sum of parts. And to give another sporting reference, sorry, but to go football this time, if we think about Man United's 2013 title winning team.
So long ago.
So long ago, I know.
Oh,
Individually, and even if you look at them as a series of 11 players, no one that year thought they should win the title, but collectively they were greater than the sum of their parts. The big issue for most organisations, though, is how can they measure alignment? How do they know whether there are misalignments in their teams?
So we've developed a methodology to measure alignment that is about measuring focus in key performance areas of all employees and then analysing against key demographic information, like how long people have worked together in key roles. So we start by creating a group of key performance areas that are critical to how the organisation functions. This is so that we can measure the level of focus in these areas across the team. This is also to ensure the focus of effort is applied in the areas that actually make a difference to organisational performance. So once we have these performance areas, we can survey our people to gather information on their priorities in each performance area. And this helps us to understand what our people are focusing on in each performance area and what they are prioritising. Then we can compare what teams are focusing on in our key performance areas, see if they're aligned, and it's staggering when you get the first set of results back and look at the differences between sales, marketing, logistics, customer service, and see the misalignments for the first time. It can be quite insightful, and see what is influencing that alignment. And so that is about the length of time that people have spent together, the individual commitment levels. So to give you an idea of what those performance areas look like, just going to move to the next slide. Thank you, Wendy. Many years ago, we performed a statistical analysis of performance areas in both sport and business, and there was an incredible amount of unity across those areas. And we came up with a set of groupings that were consistent across all sporting teams and all businesses. Hopefully we can show how this works. So when we talk about people at the top there, what we're talking about is an organisation's focus when it comes to its people. Is it results? Is it driving innovation? Is it consistent quality, so process-led? What are we largely rewarding through our incentive scheme? Strategic orientation, what I mean by that is the focus of our next 12 months of goals. Is it financial results? Is it growth of market share? Is it product launch? These all speak to shared purpose. Do your team share purpose in this area? Management operation, what is the priority in management approach? Is it people development, results, speed? Decision making, what is the broad focus of decisions throughout the business? Is it on customers? Customer focus, what are we focused on in our customer experience? Is it the sales results, delivering value, delivering quality, speed? And adaptability, so when we get feedback or when we have to change tack, how do we prioritize? Is it our people? Is it our customer results? Is it shareholder results? And this flows all the way back into people. Now, if you survey everyone in your business and ask them what the focus is in these key areas and then compare, you'll get a fascinating set of results, which will speak to the alignment of your teams.
Does measuring the trust score of your organisation really matter? Currently, lots of people are weathering the storm of COVID and all its associated problems. So why should measuring trust be a priority? Well, essentially, there are two options. You can carry on as now, or you can start the trust analysis. What happens if you carry on as now? Well, the problem with this is you're driving blind. You've got no sense of what is happening, and then the first sign of trouble will be too late. You might find staff turnover increasing, key employees resigning, projects beginning to run badly, or even worse, starting to fail. And once the symptoms start, then the cost of recovery can be substantial. Cost of making new hires, getting those new hires up to speed, the time it takes to get them up to speed, and the loss of business. Now, Manley, I think next you have a story about why it's really important to have trust in your team and when is not the time to find out that you don't.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Wendy. Yeah, you don't want to find out if you can trust your teammates when you're confronted by a polar bear, because then's the time to work out if you can run faster than them or not, which is a key element. So yeah, on my race to the magnetic North Pole, we made the mistake of surprising a polar bear, and they're pretty poor at taking surprises, polar bears. They generally like to give them. And we found out this bear had been stalking us for some 3 days. Small team, 3 people, myself and 2 Royal Marines. And it's always very useful, by the way. I'm the one with the camera to stand behind a Royal Marine as well, because generally polar bears fill up after 1 Royal Marine. And that's Chris, you can see in the picture there, and he had his skis ready to make a big noise. Phil on the other side of me had the gun to scare the bear away, and I had the camera to think, well, I need to take a picture of this, at least someone will understand how I died and what happened, which is the key element. So we were lucky in the sense that we'd been with each other for a week or so by then. And so we're getting this permanent feedback on trust all the way through anyway. We're having the conversation on what we're going to do in this scenario, what we'll do in that scenario. And certainly in the heat of the moment is not the time to suddenly discover whether the trust levels are high or low. And so the urge there is to make sure that, well, rather than guess it, or rather than just assume that the trust is high, let's measure it. Let's actually work it out for real. So just to let you know, by the way, the polar bear and ourselves, it was just a mild disagreement on our relative position on the food chain, no more than that. In the end, we agreed to disagree. And there's so many other stories around that we could share as well, around trust and doing things differently. You can't run away from a polar bear. It's their world. So we ended up marching towards the bear and shooting to just try to scare it off. And fortunately, it did work. There's also an element here about how when you're in a situation like that and the trust level that you were expecting is fulfilled. So none of us panicked. We're all calm, we're all cool. We knew what we had to do. I'm a sailor, by the way. So sailor, I wasn't allowed anywhere near the gun. I'm dangerous with a gun. The only thing safe would have been the polar bear if I had the gun. So we knew each other's roles. But we trusted each other absolutely in what we were doing. That wasn't my world, the polar world. I mean, as I said, I'm a sailor. So for me, I trusted the 2 Royal Marines that I was with, and they also trusted me that I would act and respond properly as well. So up to that moment, it was all based on what we perceived our level of trust to be, and we thought it was high, and guess what? It was. And what was amazing then, moving on from that particular polar bear attack, the levels of trust were confirmed, and therefore much higher in their own right. So having an opportunity to test, trial, measure the trust, and I wouldn't recommend we use the polar bear method, Wendy, personally, for organizations, allows you not only to confirm the level of trust, but in so doing, it also builds the trust in its own right, which is the key thing. We bumped into a polar bear a few days later, actually, and all we had to do was shout at it and it ran away. So that worked.
I suppose there's a bit in there about the sort of size of teams as well. In a 3-man team, you can intuitively feel levels of trust. In a 5, 10, 15,000 person organization, gut feel doesn't get you there.
No, and it's a tricky thing with gut feel. Even on my boat with 17 people on it, you don't know until you hit the first storm how people are going to react. And when we had our first hurricane, I may have had a preconceived idea as the leader of who I thought may shine and who I thought would not shine. And what I invariably found, and it was fascinating, was that there were some people that I didn't have great hopes with who just completely blew me away, who had such a strong level of inner confidence in themselves, and it's such a new world for them too, that I learned as a leader to park my prejudice and preconceived ideas on who I could or couldn't trust, because I was always surprised in a positive way by the people that I potentially could have put down in my own perception. So yeah, the danger with our own guesswork as leaders is that our preconceived ideas, our prejudices, our preferences, and our biases get in the way as well. So let's try and remove that as well.
Second option, rather than waiting to see the storm coming, is to start trust analysis. So data-driven decisions will always outperform opinions in the long term. If you can get a current baseline trust score of multiple teams, then you can identify areas where there are potential problems and react to them. Perhaps you need to implement remedial plans. And then you can focus the resources that you have available on where you've identified the problems and not just where you think there might be issues, and then monitor carefully for other symptoms. And it's then possible to move into a cycle of gathering the data, gathering the trust score, reviewing the data, remediating before assessing again.
So if you are measuring alignment now, it will provide you with the insight you need to take action early. That's improvements in communication, identification of silos, seeing where there is shared purpose, where there isn't, where people are buying into the organizational purpose and where they're not, whether that is about how well you've communicated or whether that is about them believing in it. That data will come through, and you'll also see how strong the team bonds across the group are. And that all leads to thriving teams.
So this probably isn't going to be a shock to most people, but the good news is that we can help. We're offering a free team alignment survey to get you started, which will help give you that baseline of the trust score and understand where you are now. So as part of the survey, we'll calculate the trust score, which you're then able to track over time. You'll be able to compare your team with others using our benchmarking, and we'll also highlight areas where there are misalignments and where action is needed, maybe around training, performance management, development plans, or communications. The impact of these misalignments, or the potential impact of these misalignments and not understanding your T-score, is an increase in staff turnover, reduced productivity, reduced efficiency, goals being missed, and an impact on profit and loss. By understanding where you are now with your trust score and having the ability to track any changes, you can show a direct result of any interventions that you make. All of this together helps you build thriving teams. So how does it work? Well, we'll send the MyPeople team alignment survey link via email to up to 500 people and collect their responses. We'll then analyse those responses and provide you with a report that is packed with actionable insights, including that trust score and the industry benchmarks. You're then able to start making any necessary changes and monitor the impact on your trust score, as well as the impact on performance, whether that's goal achievement or financial performance. So if you'd like to learn more or get started on understanding the trust score in your organisation, then you can contact us on wendy@mypeoplegroup.com. Reminder that if you missed one of the webinars in the trust series, you can view them all on our YouTube channel, or indeed if you drop one of us an email or drop the previous email address, wendy@mypeoplegroup.com, we can send out the links for you. So, questions. Are there any questions for Manley or Christian? Well, we have them both. First question, Christian, from Dave. Do people happily complete these surveys?
Yes.
Short answer.
We have designed the surveys through a lot of focus groups to be under 3 minutes. So they are not going to take hours for anybody to complete. And the point of that is once you get over 3 minutes, there's a real drop off in terms of people's completion rates for surveys. So for the most part, we're seeing between 70 and 85% completion rates of the surveys that our customers are using. And I think there's an element in here of actually people want to share their feelings, people want to give feedback.
And a supplementary question to that, are they always honest?
Well, you have a range of bias filters we apply to see what levels of honesty are occurring. To give you one example of perhaps a confused message, there was one customer we worked with. They had about 600 odd people in their firm, and we asked people to measure their own behaviors against the company values, and we asked them to measure everybody else's, to give an opinion on everyone else's. And without fail, all 500 plus people felt they were close to perfect. I mean, in the 90 percentiles, they were all saying, yep, we totally demonstrate every single behavior within the organization, all 9 of them. But guess what? Our peer group, they were around about the 60. So we don't think any of the people we work with is demonstrating the behaviors. So instantly you've got an issue there. Something is, that's about defensiveness. I'm not going to say I'm bad at anything. But I'm quite happy to criticize other people, and I'm not going to take ownership of anything. It's everyone else's fault. So even in that form, where clearly the results are hugely biased and there isn't honesty being applied, there is insight that can show you what's happening in your culture.
And Christian, my experience on this is that actually the second and third and subsequent surveys tend to be more honest. as people see the reaction to what they gave in the first survey, assuming that you don't beat people up after the first survey, of course. If they feel listened to, feel that their voice was respected and there's action taken, which is positive, then I find in my work that the honesty, if you like, improves.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a period of time for most of the organisations we work with where you get a bit of a bump, where the initial scores look meteoric and you think, great, we're doing all right here. And then the next set of scores are lower. But when we first started looking at these sort of 5-6 years ago, we used to think that something terrible had happened, but actually it was more about rebasing. So we tend to take the first 3 as the baseline for the year.
Cool.
And another question here is, the previous webinars on relationships and behaviours, which is the most important metric to start measuring in your opinion?
I think they all are important. That's the easiest to measure in terms of sort of survey design is behaviours. Most people have, or most organisations have, values and behaviours in place. And it doesn't need to be hugely complicated, the measurement there. You can get some good insight quite quickly. So that is, I hate the phrase, but that is sort of the low-hanging fruit starting point. But the more interesting elements are when you start to combine them, because that's where you get the real insights. That's where you can say specific teams, what they're doing well and what they're not doing well. What was your experience, Manley? You've used a lot of our approach and methodology. What have you found the sort of most...
And I mean, your first answer was the right one, that they're all jolly important. But measuring behaviours is easy in the context that you can see a behaviour. It's above the surface, if you like, if you're thinking of an iceberg or something like that. I believe, though, that the real strength and the breakthrough part is in that alignment. Assuming that the behaviours are the right kind of behaviours, it's the combined effort, if you like. So if everyone's focused in the same way, if all the intent is going in the same direction, then by definition the impact that I found on performance increases. You know, whether that's in organizations, in a company. I mean, even if you think about a yacht, you know, as a metaphor for a business, there are lots of different parts of a yacht which all need to work collectively for the yacht to go forward in the right direction. And it's the same with a business. So I find the principle of alignment the strongest one to impact performance.
Yeah, I mean, Ron Dennis, who was the previous CEO of McLaren and founder, I think. I don't have to check my stats on that. He used to have a phrase when he was asked by a journalist, what's the hardest thing about leadership? And he said, getting everyone pointing in the same direction.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's another one here. Manley, have you ever worked in a low trust team, and what was the impact of that?
Have I ever worked in a low trust team? Yes. Gosh, extraordinarily. In a large consortium that I ended up joining the board of because it was so dysfunctional. You couldn't alter it as a consultant, as an external person, because any external voice was ignored. And there were a number of consortium companies together, and the levels of trust, it had gone beyond mistrust. It had actually gone into sort of dislike and almost hate and trying to work against each other. So it was toxic, it was awful. And for the people below the leadership team who were taking on the behaviors of the leadership team, it was it was painful, and the output was a disaster as well. So the customer and the client were all pretty unhappy as well. So the first thing there was to try and get people were fighting from their own corners, from their own egos, if you know what I mean. So the danger was we're all doing our own stuff. It's a bit like, if just a couple of minutes, if there are any Tolkien fans out there and the Lord of the Rings, there's one little bit where the ring's got to get destroyed. If you don't know it at all, very simply, there are goodies and baddies, and all the power's in the ring, right? And the baddie wants the ring, but the goodies have got it. And there's an amalgamation of all different sorts of tribes of goodies, and the ring's on the table and say it's got to be destroyed. And they all started arguing, saying, well, yeah, I'd never trust an elf. I would never put in the hands of a dwarf. And as they were stuck in their own stories and their own egos, nothing happened. There was no movement. And it wasn't until the Hobbit, little Frodo, said, I'll take the ring, but I need some help, when everyone realized, actually, all right, shipmate, we're with you. And then you saw them align, and that's when things happened. And so the mistrust bit is based on our backstory, protecting ourselves, our own ego. we're not aligning to anything. So if you're going to align to a bigger sense of purpose, which is why that concept of purpose is so important, and it's not the scoreboard, it's beyond the scoreboard, as you know, then that allows people to align. And once you've got that bigger thing, which is then above the individual ego, you can come forward. So with that particular consortium, we worked hard on creating that sense of commonality that all the companies wanted to serve the customer in the end. So great, right, what's our best way to do that? And there's the common ground. That's our purpose. So let's come together. And we did. It took a couple of years, and it was pretty painful to begin with. And it's just no fun at all. It's horrible, the atmosphere and everything. So, and a couple of years later, you got people who are going out to dinner with each other and stuff like that, and their families are engaged. And hey, guess what? It works. So yeah, it's pretty horrible to low trust. It really is.
It was an unusual moment for a My People webinar. We've used something other than a sports story.
Well, I thought I'd just try and bring something. Now, my sporting story for low trust, of course, is...
What happened there was like joining the Matrix.
And from David, do you use live polar bears to test the survey scores? You could, but I suggest before you do that, you do some sprint training first, David, because all you got to do is run faster than your mates. And then you're fine.
Just run faster than one other person, and you'll
just one other person. It doesn't have to be everybody. That's absolutely a good point. And then you realise your mates have tied your shoelaces together. But yeah, again, even the metaphor for a polar bear. You know, there'll be organisations and people on this webinar maybe part of some where the trust hasn't been great going into the COVID-19 stuff, and that's made it hard work. Particularly as we can't get together and build the relationships and build the trust in the normal way. So being able to measure it, being able to then focus to build it in the right way is absolutely key. Taking away into the leadership bias, giving yourself the facts to do it. If I didn't have this tool when I started out my yacht, I'm sure it would have been jolly useful. I may even have won the race, you never know.
You wouldn't have been able to do the sort of live updates though on the boat. The phones would have got wet. There could have been all sorts of problems there.
You'd be surprised. A lot of technology. I actually became a godfather mid-ocean on that boat with a live link to Portsmouth Cathedral. So you can do anything nowadays.
Yeah, technology.
So next question, I guess for both of you. How do you determine whether your team is perfectly aligned or simply avoiding confrontation?
I've got some thoughts on that, Christian, and you may have some as well, I'm sure. It is about performance, because avoiding confrontation is one of the dangers of using the word collaboration, because people think collaboration means I'm not allowed to argue, I'm not allowed to shout at you. Whereas what collaboration should mean is that inside the locked door here, we'll scream and shout, we'll have difference of opinion, and we'll work our way through it, bearing in mind we've got the higher goal, and then when we leave the room, we'll walk out hand in hand. And so where you find people just trying to keep the peace, with any pressure in the system, it falls apart. So on my boat, for example, if I didn't feel there's a strong sense of alignment within the various parts of the boat, then the first storm, 3 days out of leaving England, a storm 3 days later, it could all gone completely Pete Tong, because they just that stress in the system was enough to expose the fallacy of being misaligned. So yeah, that's the point. You can get away with it when times are good. If there's no real pressure in the system, you can gloss over it and get away. But as soon as there's pressure, the results speak for themselves on that one. What's your thoughts on that, Christian?
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I mean, most of what we do is measured against the scoreboard as an output. And the key theme today has been measuring those inputs, because you're really only getting half the equation. But I'd agree with that pressure analogy, and that a lot of the teams that we've worked with, that maybe the alignment is masked. I'll come back onto that in a second. You can see it in other areas. You can see performance drop-offs. You can see communication drop-offs. And I think one of the things that perhaps we could get more across from the survey methodology we're using here and the approach is that very rarely do you get a single score, or I'm aligned or not aligned. It's rarely a binary response. It's more about where there are misalignments, and it's in specific areas. It's where teams haven't worked together for very long, where there are huge value differences between the way people go about their jobs. That's where you can see it in the measurement. And there are always misalignments. I don't think I've ever worked with an organization which is like everybody's, wow, perfectly aligned. It is normal for there to be confrontation, differences of opinion. In fact, a lot of people that I've worked with would call that creative difference important, that it's actually fueled
Totally.
the fuel of the organisation. So it's not trying to eliminate confrontation to sort of echo your point. I think it's about bridging those gaps with common purpose.
Yes, it is. I mean, you want to foster a challenge culture, a culture which allows us to give and receive challenge, dropping the ego, being humble with it, and recognizing the intent is positive and the intent is aligned is a key thing. Absolutely. Shall I go for that one, Wendy? There's another question there.
There is another question there, which is, how can you maintain trust when there is underperformance and you know a colleague is trying to hide this?
Tricky is the answer to that one. And you can't, because you get really annoyed. There's a brilliant video of feeding some monkeys, actually, and they're both fed grapes, and then two monkeys in two cages alongside each other, both fed grapes. It was fine. Then one was fed a grape, the other was fed a bit of cucumber, and it didn't like it straight away. It instantly pushed back because it saw its mate getting a grape. So we have this inbuilt sense of fairness within what we're doing. I do a lot of work with organizations and work with becoming high performance organizations. And the research by an amazing Dutch professor called Dr. André de Waal on high performance, this concept of dealing with underperformance is a key factor of a high performance organization. If we let it ride, bad apple concept, then actually it creates such a tension. And the danger is in organizations, we hear people say, well, if you're going to get something done, give it to someone who's busy. So we tend to make it even worse. And knowing, for example, that if I give it to Christian, nothing happens, but I give it to Wendy, it'll get done. So guess what? I ignore Christian and give it straight to Wendy. I thought I'd do it that way around, because obviously closer to the truth as well. But the principle there is the danger is Christian gets away with it, and Wendy's then working really hard and doing great stuff. But you build that tension, and then the trust starts dropping. So as a leader and as a colleague too, where there's underperformance, you have to address it. It doesn't mean firing people or hurting, but just address it. Work out what is the cause and resolve it. You can't let it foster and fester. Would be my answer.
Perfect. This is the last call for questions before I close it off. Just before we do, I'm just going to share it one last time. If you are interested in knowing more about your team's alignment, then we're offering the free survey. So contact us, wendy@mypeoplegroup.com.
That is your real life email address, isn't it, Wendy? That's not a chat bot.
No, that is my real email address. You can really email me, actually me. Guys, there are no more questions coming in. I can't see any more. Thank you both very much for your time this afternoon. Thank you to everyone on the webinar who's given up their time to listen to us and listen to our stories or your stories. Manley, thanks very much once again for joining us.
My pleasure. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you. Cheers, team.
Thanks, guys. Cheers.